Grade 11s. Back to school in term 2. I don't think you realize how much that means to teachers, even under normal circumstances, but it certainly means a lot to me. I do miss you a huge amount during school holidays, always, and I'm very excited to be back at school, even though it's online school. Right, I'm going to turn off that video camera so that you don't have to spend quality or less quality time looking at me, and we'll get on with some work. Okay, so let's go share the screen. And let's go beginning. Okay, so the first section that we're going to start with this term is what is called gaseous exchange, and we're only going to deal with gaseous exchange in animals. We're not going to look at it in plants. This is what the section we were supposed to do at the end of last term, and then we swapped it around for doing the influences of humans on the environment. We're going to do it now. Okay, so let's go. So there are a few confusing terms within this section, and so I'm going to spend 2 slides going through 2 terms that you must not confuse at this point and a little bit later on. So the gaseous exchange system is sometimes called the respiratory system, and so you'll see pictures on the internet and you'll see posters in classrooms that call it the respiratory system, but that's hugely confusing and that could lead to misconceptions. And so I would prefer it if you don't use this term, the respiratory system, but rather talk about it as the gaseous exchange system. Okay, and the reason why is because, remember you learned about cellular respiration last time when we dealt with photosynthesis, then we dealt with cellular respiration. And you were taught that it could be called cellular respiration or cell respiration or tissue respiration or just respiration. And that is very specifically the breakdown of organic food molecules within cells to release energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate or ATP as a usable form of energy for living organisms. And remember, it required oxygen and it needed organic food molecules, and the end products were ATP and carbon dioxide and water. And this is very different from gaseous exchange, and so I would prefer you to use the term gaseous exchange for the section that we're dealing with now, and cell respiration or respiration for this series of chemical reactions. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so there are a number of diagrams in this PowerPoint that have labels in the plural when label lines go to a single structure. Also labels that are not spelled with UK spelling, which is what the IB requires of you. And I haven't had time to go through and change them all. So normally when I do a PowerPoint for you, I try very hard to change all the labels, but it's an exceptionally time-consuming process, and I haven't had time to do that for this PowerPoint. So remember, you will lose marks if you label in the plural, but you have a label line that goes to a single structure. So you can't, for example, in the diagram of the cell, have one line going to a ribosome and label it ribosomes. In addition, remember that you should be doing your labels in lowercase unless it's a proper noun. So an example of a label that has a capital letter because it's a proper noun would be Golgi apparatus. So remember last year you learned about the Golgi apparatus in the cell, and Golgi is a proper noun because it's named after somebody. And so Golgi apparatus starts with a capital G, but mitochondrion, lowercase m. Okay. Remember that life sciences follows something called a SAGS document. Other subjects follow something called a CAPS document. So for very complicated reasons, life sciences doesn't use a CAPS document, it uses a SAGS document. And this tells you what you're expected to know for this particular section. And we'll go through all of this stuff. Okay, so what is gaseous exchange? It's the absorption of molecular oxygen, in other words, O2, from the environment into the cells, and the excreting of carbon dioxide, CO2, from the cells of the organism back to the environment. Let's just do a little detour and talk about the word excreting. Remember that when we covered this section on nutrition, I spoke about the fact that excretion, by definition, is the getting rid of toxic waste substances made by the body. And when we dealt with nutrition, I said to you that you should not use the word excretion when talking about feces, because feces are not made by the body. It's the remains of food that went into one end of the body and it's just passing out the other end. In this case, remember that the carbon dioxide is the waste product made during cell respiration, with the carbon and the oxygen coming off the organic food molecule. Well, not coming off of it. When the organic food molecule is broken down during cell respiration, then this carbon comes from the organic food molecule and this oxygen does too. Okay, and so the word excretion certainly applies here. It's toxic, it's made by the body. Right, so what's the purpose of gaseous exchange? Remember that gaseous exchange occurs to enable cells to do cell respiration. Remember, cell respiration is the breaking down of organic food molecules to release energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which is a usable form of energy for living organisms. The supply of oxygen is needed to convert that stored organic energy into the form of ATP. Right, remember that the two byproducts of cellular respiration are carbon dioxide and water. So we're not concerned with the water at the moment. We're really only concerned with the carbon dioxide, which is why the slide only shows the carbon dioxide. Those are products at the end of cell respiration, and they must be passed out of the body. Okay. So this means that as a result of cell respiration, there must be a continuous exchange of gases between an organism and its environment, the absorption of oxygen, and the excretion of carbon dioxide. Right, so what's the air supply or respiratory medium or source of oxygen in various different living organisms? For terrestrial, in other words, land living animals, it's the air in the atmosphere. For aquatic animals, in other words, ones that live in water, it's the oxygen that is dissolved in the water. The atmosphere has about 21% of it is comprised of oxygen. Bodies of water have less oxygen in them than air does, but it's the percentage oxygen in water varies more than the percentage oxygen in air. Okay, so if, for example, remember you've learned, if, for example, there's an algal bloom in the water because there are, for example, too many fertilizer nutrients in the water, and therefore there's an algal bloom result, then as organisms die, the bacteria use up the oxygen in the water, and the water becomes anoxic. It becomes eutrophication occurs, and there's far less oxygen in the water, and many organisms die as a result. Right, other relevant definitions. breathing or ventilation. Now we're going to talk about the fact that many organisms, such as earthworms, flatworms, etc., use their external surface, in other words, their skin, as a gaseous exchange organ. So all that happens is oxygen diffuses from the surrounding air through their skin into the blood, maybe not even into the blood, and diffuses to all the cells. However, larger land-living organisms, terrestrial organisms, have internal gaseous exchange surfaces. And that means that the air outside, rich in oxygen, has to be pulled into the organism for gaseous exchange to occur, and then air rich in carbon dioxide has to be pushed out of the organism. Okay, so breathing or ventilation, those two terms can be used interchangeably, is the process of moving air rich in oxygen from the environment so that it comes into contact with the gaseous exchange surface. And in humans, that is the alveoli in the lungs. We'll talk about that just now. And then the pushing out or the moving of air rich in carbon dioxide from the gaseous exchange surface back to the external environment. Okay, again, certain sources will use the term respiration when they're talking about breathing or ventilation. I would prefer that you don't do that because it's just going to get you into problems and it's going to lead to misconceptions. So don't. Okay. So what is a gaseous exchange surface? Gases are exchanged with the environment at the gaseous exchange surface. Gas movement is always by diffusion from a region of higher diffusion pressure or higher concentration of a particular gas to a region of lower diffusion pressure or lower concentration, than the concentration. Sorry, I'm going to say this one again. I got sidetracked. Gas movement is by diffusion from a region of higher diffusion pressure or higher concentration of that particular gas to a region of lower diffusion pressure or concentration of that particular gas. So here we've got a gas that is indicated as little red dots. High concentration here, region of lower concentration there. And so the net movement of these molecules is from a region of higher to a region of lower. Okay, doesn't necessarily have to be high and low, because it can be low and lower, and the movement is still in that direction. Okay, if the other gas molecules involved, then it still would be, you consider the one gas only, and you consider the movement of gas molecules of only the one type, from the region of higher of that type to the region of lower of that type. Okay, so if you go and you click on that particular link and you go to that particular page, then what you can see is you can watch the process of diffusion of gases. I'm going to risk it. I'm going to see if I can do this. No, sorry. Okay, you're going to have to do it. So scroll down the page, go to a little picture that looks like this, and what you will see is you will see the movement of gases in that particular simulation, animation. So this particular thing shows, it's a picture, it's not an animation. It shows that you've got green gas and purple gas, and they're in two separate containers, and here's a little tap that can be opened or closed. So you've got a region of high concentration of green, region of higher concentration of purple. And if the little tap or stopcock is opened and it's allowed to continue for long enough, what will happen is it will reach an equilibrium. So eventually, half of the purple gas molecules will be here and half of them will be here, half of the green, half of the green. It doesn't mean that the gases stop moving. They don't stop moving. They move, but it'll be an equal movement from this side to that side as from that side to this side. Okay, I hope you understand that. You learned about it when you were in grade 9. All right. So this particular site shows diffusion of a gas across a selectively permeable membrane. And I did check and see that it was an active site when I did this PowerPoint the other day. All right. If you go to this YouTube video and you go to 1 minute 20 seconds, that also shows you the movement of gases in 2 directions at the alveoli. Right. And one of the things that's important in this particular section is that you know and understand what is an efficient gaseous exchange surface. So first of all, a gaseous exchange surface must be one that is thin. So I've said here thin-walled. In other words, the wall of the gaseous exchange surface must be thin enough to enable the gases to move rapidly from one side through the surface to the other side. If it is too thick, it's not going to happen effectively. Secondly, it has to have a large enough surface area in relation to the volume of the animal or the volume of the gaseous exchange surface to enable maximum gaseous exchange and adequate absorption of gases. So if you consider something like an elephant, for example, it is a huge organism. It's got many millions of cells, and its gaseous exchange surface is the alveoli of the lungs in the elephant. This concept of large enough surface area, here we're talking about the whole volume of the elephant, and what I'm saying to you is there has to be a large enough surface area. In other words, if you total the surface area of all the alveoli, then there has to be a large enough surface area for absorbing enough oxygen that every single cell of that elephant is provided with an adequate amount of oxygen, and also to get rid of the carbon dioxide. Now, this is a critical concept, and I hope you understand it. And if you don't, there is an activity a little bit further on that you need to go through that will help you understand it, and that activity in the textbook that I'm telling you need to look at as well. Okay. In addition, it needs to have a very good blood supply to ensure that the gas that is absorbed is transported away quickly to maintain what is known as a diffusion pressure gradient. So let's picture a high train station at Rosebank, for example. Okay, so you've got stairs going down to the high train platform underground, and people move down those stairs onto the platform to catch the high train. Let's presume we've got 500 people come down the stairs to the platform to pass along the platform and get onto the train and be taken away somewhere else, let's say to Tambo, because flights have been restored and they're all going away on a trip. Now, the analogy that I'm making here is the platform is the gaseous exchange surface. The stairs going down to the platform is equivalent to the trachea and the nostrils, and the train is the blood supply that takes away the oxygen that came down the stairs. Okay, so people coming down the stairs is oxygen, air-rich in oxygen, coming down the trachea. The platform is the gaseous exchange surface. Those people, when they get down to the platform, don't accumulate at that platform. If they did, it would be result in a situation where no more people could come down those stairs. No more oxygen molecules could come down the trachea. Okay, so there's got to be a good blood supply. Lots of car trains have got to arrive at that platform to take those people away as quickly as possible, to make sure that there's a diffusion pressure gradient. In other words, so that more people can carry on coming down the stairs. I hope you understand that analogy. Okay. In addition to that, gases can only pass through cell membranes if they've dissolved in water. And so gaseous exchange surfaces must be moist. And this became a problem in evolutionary terms when organisms left water and started living on land, because the potential for gaseous exchange surfaces to dry out is much greater on land, obviously, than it is for an aquatic organism. Okay. Right, let's talk about diffusion rate. So the rate of diffusion across a gaseous exchange surface is defined as the number of molecules that move from one side of the membrane to the other side per unit time. In other words, it could be something as simple as 20 molecules move across the membrane per second. The unit time is not stipulated in this particular definition. It could be seconds, it could be minutes, it depends on what you're looking at that time. Okay. So, what determines the diffusion rate of a gas? The net diffusion rate of a gas across a membrane is proportional to the difference in partial pressure. In other words, if on side A there is a high partial pressure of gas, let's say there are, 1,000 oxygen molecules on one side, and on the other side there are only 2 oxygen molecules, then the difference in partial pressure, in other words, the difference in concentration gradient of that gas, is a big difference. If, however, on one side it was 500 molecules of oxygen and on the other side it was 450, the difference between the partial pressure on the two sides is not as great, and therefore the rate of diffusion would be much slower. In addition, the surface area, and we've spoken about this, of the membrane, the greater the surface area, the greater the total number of gas molecules can move across it. And I think that that's pretty logical. And it's inversely proportional, and I've just explained this to you, to the thickness of the membrane. The thicker the membrane, the slower the rate of diffusion. The longer it takes for the molecules to reach the other side. Okay. So we're going to talk about different kinds of gaseous exchange surfaces in various different animals. So consider a fish and a mammal. They have obviously very different gaseous exchange surfaces. You know, I presume, that fish have gills, and in the case of mammals, the gas exchange surface is the air sacs, known as alveoli, of the lungs in a mammal. Okay. So I'm going to quickly describe the various different kinds of gas exchange systems in some animals other than mammals. And while you need to have an idea of the variety of gas exchange systems in animals, glance over them, don't obsessively learn them. Okay. If under normal circumstances, you would be provided with this information if we asked a question about that. I hope. No, I would. Okay. So first of all, looking at little unicellular organisms. So an example would be this tiny little unicellular animal that you've encountered quite a few times before. Its genus name is amoeba, and you know that it's a genus name because it is spelled with a capital A, and it is in italics. When you write it with a capital A, but you can't write in italics, so you underline it. Okay, so let's go. It's a single-celled animal or a unicellular organism. Sorry, it's not an animal. Anyway, it exchanges gases directly across the cell membrane. So there's oxygen in the water surrounding it, and that oxygen, higher partial pressure of oxygen or higher concentration of oxygen in the water than inside the organism, because the organism has used its oxygen to do cellular respiration. And so oxygen diffuses through the cell membrane from a region of higher to a region of lower concentration of oxygen, inside the organism. Carbon dioxide diffuses in the other direction, all the way across the surface area of this animal. So the slow diffusion rate of carbon dioxide and oxygen limits the maximum size to which a single-celled animal can grow. And this animal is really tiny, so its surface area in relation to its volume is actually very big. So it is able to cope with this, but we'll talk about that. A unicellular animal, no, that should be large. I'm sorry, guys, I will change that. A large surface area relative to its volume. No, no, no. Ignore all this. I don't know how. A multicellular animal, a multicellular, that's what's wrong. So it needs to, this word needs to change to multicellular. I'll change that before I put the PowerPoint onto Moodle for you, but just you need to take it as being cross that out and call it multicellular, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to write this. Multicellular. This is dreadful. Sorry, guys. Hark. I'll be writing like this all day when I read your work. Okay, right. We're going to have to. Okay, I've got to do something that clears the text, otherwise it happens forever in all of the rest of the things from here on. How do I do that? Text. No. Okay. Clear text. No, I don't know how to clear the text. Really, like me. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Going. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about this concept of a ratio of surface area to volume. Okay. So it's a very important concept in biology because living cells can only get materials in, so materials such as glucose and oxygen, through their cell membrane and can only get rid of waste products out through the cell membrane. And as the ratio of surface area to volume decreases, it means that every unit of volume of cytoplasm is being serviced by less and less surface area. So what does that mean? It means that if you take a towel, okay, so you've gone swimming and you've dried yourself off, and you take your towel and you then, it's now wet and you want it to dry. So would you take that towel and you need it to dry quickly before you go home? Would you take that towel and spread it out? Or would you take that towel and just drop it in a little bundle on the beach and hope that it dries out quickly? It's never going to dry out quickly if it's in a little bundle. So in terms of volume, you're not changing the surface area. The volume of that towel. So the volume is constant. If you lay the towel out flat, then for that volume, it's got a large surface area. It's going to dry quickly. However, if you put it in a little bundle on the ground or anywhere, then although it's got exactly the same volume, it's got a much smaller surface area. It's never going to dry out. Same kind of thing. You're running late for school and you've got porridge and the porridge is really hot and you need to eat it quickly because your mom's or dad or older sibling is standing outside yelling at you that you're going to be late for school and you're going, but I've got to finish my food first. Do you put that porridge in a bowl, small bowl, or do you put it in a larger bowl and flatten it out? Will it come quicker if it is flattened out than if it is in a little bundle in the middle of that bowl or not? I do hope you understand this concept. So the bigger something is, the smaller its ratio of surface area to volume. And you're going to do an activity to see that. Okay. So you're going to do the practical activity 1 on page 205 of your textbook. It's actually page 205 and 206. So do the activity and answer all the questions in that activity. Okay. Right, so that's enough for today's lesson.